As authors, we need to build our own audiences. Publishers expect it, and we need our own platforms. Social media companies use algorithms that can be fickle, causing us to reel from frequent change. I'm Carroza, and after 40 years of offline and online marketing, I wrote Rockin' ROI: How to Bootstrap E-commerce with Performance-Based Marketing. I want to share a quote from marketing expert Dan Oshinsky that every entrepreneur needs to plan a new revenue stream every year. Always be thinking about how you can monetize your efforts, and having that proprietary audience through an email list helps achieve all your goals. Best core asset is an email list of followers and a consistent newsletter. Use a blog on your website to help attract new subscribers. And a podcast or YouTube channel and videos also help to expand your audience. Ways to attract subscribers is to give something away that's of interest or value to your prospects. There are a few types of these freebies. 1, assets you create or belong to others. 2, access to memberships, special events, and the like. And 3, special offers, discounts, and coupons. Don't fret that you have to do this alone. A rising tide lifts all boats, and it can make it all the more fun and worthwhile. Look for partners to collaborate with and monetize your lead generation efforts with partners whose books and products you like, who are willing to share revenues with you when you promote them. And when you promote their enterprise, they're likely to promote your books, events, and services too. And again, lifting all boats, everyone benefits. So where do you start? Low-hanging fruit. Look around at who you know now. Chances are you already are connected to someone of like mind with synergistic niches. If they have groups or a podcast, perhaps you can ask to give a talk to their audience while giving something of value away to the members. Perhaps you can suggest writing a post for their blog and post one of theirs on yours, or advertise their messages to your followers in exchange for similar promotion by them of your stuff. Create a campaign strategy with the objective to collect a network of people where you promote on each other's behalf. Do it regularly. Proactively research potential partners such as other authors in your genre, search out book reviewers, befriend them, find journalists and podcasters who might be interested in your topic, and give out samples of your work such as PDFs of some writings, even if you don't give out your books. It's easy for partners and journalists to learn about you and share your writing, products, and your social accounts. Create a media page on your site with long and short versions of your bio, photos of your book covers, as well as a headshot of you. And then use a page to share testimonials, awards, press releases, speeches, links to interviews, products, services, social links, and of course, your contact information. Then craft a template of a media pitch letter that you can customize. When you reach out to a journalist, give them reasons to interview you. Suggest the topics that you are qualified to talk about. Explain why you're the expert that they need, and then go into what the future of the topic will be. To the foundation that surrounds your media page. Create your author page. Build the pages where people sign up for your newsletter and offer a gift as an enticement and thank you for onboarding. Share why you do the work you do and your unique value proposition that you offer those prospects. At least half a dozen posts in your blog. Publish several newsletter editions, and they don't need to be more than a few short paragraphs pointing out work you admire in others as well as your own pieces. Even if you don't do your own podcast, build YouTube playlists of short videos that you do, of interviews you've done, or in a collection of tips maybe that you like. Now you can begin to contact partners. Comment on their posts. When you read their books, post reviews, then send them screenshots of your comments and reviews showing your appreciation. Sign up for their newsletter, show up for their talks. If you're writing on a topic they're familiar with, send a draft and ask for a quote that you can include. Get their attention with handwritten notes. Direct message with small requests, perhaps ask to repost something of theirs. If they have an affiliate program, sign up. Follow up. Keep commenting and reach out after several for a slightly larger ask, such as a phone call to explore synergies where you can help each other. Always keep a good record of these interactions with dates, next actions, due dates, and projects together. If you want to learn 30 ways to collaborate and get more than 70 lead magnet ideas to help build your author empire, find those answers at jancarroza.bio.link.
Hello and welcome to the RV Book Fair. My name is Lucia Matuonto and welcome back to the RV Book Fair 2024. Today I'm thrilled to have my co-host Rick Incorvia joining us. Rick is a prolific author and storyteller and one of the 14th authors featured in the anthology Relatable Voices. So, Rick, thank you very much for co-hosting this event with me.
I always enjoy driving in the RV. Always a great crowd. Love it.
Thank you very much. And today we are going to dive into some great discussions on our theme, comfort, encourage, and inspire. Authors sharing stories that uplift and empower.
Let's see, Elizabeth Cottrell, a writer, speaker, blogger, and author of Heartspoken, How to Write Notes That Connect, Comfort, Encourage, and Inspire. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Elizabeth. We've been talking a lot through emails, and I really appreciate your presence here. So, Rick, it will be a blast. Let's say that.
We're going to have fun getting to know each other.
It's a topic that is so important and so often overlooked. So I'm thrilled that we're bringing it front and center.
Yes. And next we have Chimnese, a social media consultant and author of many books. Her latest book is titled Ruins. Welcome, Chimnese, to the RV Book Fair.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just glad to be here. And I love the topic. When I saw the topic, I was like, I agree with Elizabeth. We definitely need more of comfort in our current state where we are in our countries, in the world, basically. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
And then we have Patrick Greenwood, a blogger, podcaster, novelist, and a fellow espresso lover. His latest release is The Shores of Okinawa. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks, Rick, very much. I'm very happy to be here, and Lucia, it's always wonderful to see you. And thank you for having me on the RV Book Fair. I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you for definitely getting me on like this.
It's my pleasure. You are also a part of the RV family for a long time.
Yes.
Elizabeth, let's start with Elizabeth. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey so far.
Sure, I'd be delighted. So I am Virginia born. This is the mid-Atlantic part of the United States, but I ended up in graduate school down in Louisiana and met a boy to whom I've now been married for 51 years.
Wow.
So he was sweet enough to bring me back to Virginia. And while I have never thought of myself as a writer until recent years, I have done a lot of writing. I had a liberal arts education and did a lot of technical writing as a scientist and business writer. But over those years, I wrote a lot of notes to people, just thought that it was something I should do, that I wanted to do. And I'm at the age where it was sort of expected. But then I got comments from people saying, I don't know how you know what to say. I wish that I could find the right words. I wish that I could write notes like you. And finally, somebody somewhere said, I wish you'd write a book about this. And so at the tender age of 70, I got a I'm 70.
No. I heard 40. I heard 40.
That's what I thought.
I did not hear 70. I heard 40.
I'll take it. I'll take it. But when I turned 70, the April of COVID, 1 month after the world shut down, My
Oof.
daughter wrote me, didn't write me, she called me from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she said, Mom, I know that your calendar has gone from completely full to completely empty, just like everybody else's, and I want you to get that book written. And she didn't stop there. She said, and for your birthday, I'm giving you some time with a friend of mine who is an accountability coach.
Love it.
I did not even know what an accountability coach was. So I asked, and she said, she's going to call you every week and ask you what you've done and what you're going to do before she calls you the next week.
Mhm.
Get on it, lady. Let's go. Come on.
I mean,
Mhm.
I could have promised myself that I'd write a book for decades, which I did actually. But no, I couldn't let my daughter down. So during that first year of COVID, I got that book out of my head, out of my heart. And then, of course, I had to figure out what to do with it. But if I have a message for everybody, it is you are never too old or too late to learn something new and to do something that means a lot to you. And so this whole thread of note writing may sound a bit random, but it comes from my firm belief on another topic that I have written about in my blog for literally 25 years, which is the power of connection. And I believe in my personal life, there are 4 kinds of connection that have made the foundation for my own life: with the higher power, with myself, with others, and with nature. And I find that when my life is off kilter in any way, I can almost always look and see that one of those 4 connections needs strengthening. So this particular slice of connecting with others in writing notes is just a tool. Note writing is just a connection tool. And so, but what has thrilled me is that not only have people resonated with the message, but there has been a whole group of people in business, corporate world, nonprofit world, sales world, who realize that note writing is important for them to build their relationships. So that's how it started, and it's been a wonderful journey.
Elizabeth, I have to ask you, how did it feel to write the end?
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you were like me when I wrote my first book, I thought, there it is, I'm done. And there's so much more to do at that point, isn't
My
there?
God.
You know, all the editing, and you feel like I thought I was done.
And you know, Rick, that has been for me almost the most exciting part in that realizing I am not anywhere near too old to learn all of these exciting things. And now we've got AI, and we've got, you know, so many technologies that are helping us
Hmm.
market our books and get our message out into the world. So yes, that was definitely only the beginning of the journey. And meeting people like you all, and meeting other writers, and meeting people that enjoyed the message, it's just been such a thrill.
Well, I got to tell you, be careful. Writing is a gateway drug. And before you know it, you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to finish this. Oh my gosh, I have an idea.
Well, you know, that may be true. I think it's more true for fiction writers than nonfiction writers. Fiction is not anything that I'm drawn to at reading. I'm an avid fiction reader, but not a writer so much. So where my brain goes with wanting that I can't sleep at night is how can I get this message out in a different way? Maybe I want to write a course. Maybe I want to do an ebook. Maybe I want to do a sequel.
Workbook.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many wonderful
Hmm.
options that we didn't have even 15 years ago.
Yes,
So
it's so wonderful
Sure
and
make.
so inspiring.
Hmm.
I think it's just amazing, Elizabeth. So congratulations for
well, thank
having
you.
started. And Chimnese. So could you share a bit about your background and what inspired your work? Where are you from first, and what you like doing there, and why did you start writing?
Thank you so much, Lucia. So for me, I actually, I am from Cape Town, South Africa, but I lived in a small town called Steenberg, where I grew up. So I am now in a whole different side of Cape Town. So you get the southern, and then you get the southwest. So I'm now in the northwest of Cape Town. Where my writing started was I think when I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, just having this vivid imagination as school teachers used to tell us stories, and then my mind would like just go into another place. Because I remember as a child, I grew up not with a lot of friends, so storytelling was my favorite time. Growing up, I think basically what inspires me is the way I grew up. That is where it inspires me, because growing up in South Africa, especially in Cape Town, it's not the easiest place, especially for women. And a lot of women, they face a lot of things. And I was just someone who wanted to be different, not to go the route that women might go, not because they had a choice, but I believe that we all have a choice. And I chose to be different. I want to be a role model for young people in my community. And that's why most of my writing is basically about empowering women, how to connect with other individuals. And I start, like what Elizabeth also said, I also started blogging, just writing all these different type of topics. And a lot of people found me through the internet, and I think that the internet does exist, because otherwise our writing would never get out there, especially if you sit in Cape Town, the world would have been actually close to you. And I'm glad that I actually bridged that gap into tapping into poetry. I published my first poetry book when I was 29, 29 years old. So that was the first time that I ever published my book. And since then, I've published 4 books, which is basically all about the journey that I've went through in life, but not writing it as me as the character, but basing it on other people that was part of my livelihood. And being part of the 14 writers that wrote that book with Lucia and Rick, I think that has been also an amazing journey for me, to know there is other writers out there in the world that I can connect to and that can relate to me and I can relate to them. So that has been it was actually been a humbling experience, Lucia, for choosing me, the only South African in the book, and most of everyone was basically from America. So that has been an amazing time for me.
It was
Yeah.
my pleasure. The first time I interviewed you, I was touched by her story. And I said, no, everything I do, I will invite you, I promise. And because she is very talented, and it's a blessing, I have to tell it. Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Patrick,
Good morning.
give us a little bit about you and why Okinawa. Tell us your story.
So I am Patrick Greenwood. I am now currently based in Oro Valley, Arizona, which is just north of Tucson. Prior to this, I was in Southern California for about 41 years. Prior to that, I was in the military. I was actually raised in Northern Virginia, Elizabeth, in Fairfax and Annandale. But thanks to the Marine Corps, they moved me out to California, and I decided to stay out here after I got out of the service. I really was not, as Lucia knows, I was not built to be a writer. I've been dyslexic since I was a child, and I've always struggled with writing. I was the last person that ever got picked for writing contests. And so I never really thought, over the years of trying to find ways to overcome it, which in some ways I did, in some ways I didn't. But it's not something that I really kind of look back upon and say, God, I wish I would have done this or done that. It just, life is the way life is, right? So as I got into technology very early in life, I spent about the last 28 years working for different tech companies. And in 2022, I decided to retire from tech, and I really focused on writing full time. Most of my work, which is my first book, which is called Forever Our Sunrise in Saigon, which is a romantic novel, a fictional with some non-fictional blend into it. That was actually co-written during the time when I visited Vietnam in 2012 and 13 and 14. Shores of Okinawa kind of is a little bit different. It's not a romantic novel. It's more of a cybersecurity thriller. novel. And that one is a little bit different, where it doesn't have any romance, but it has a lot of things about cyber terrorism and hackers and things like that as well. But the really kind of the genesis with my books is that I really write about places that I have traveled to. So I've been to, several countries around the world, either for work or for pleasure. I was stationed in Okinawa when I was in the service. So I really like to write about places I've been to, like sitting in a coffee shop in Cassius, Portugal, or going through the Louvre, or going into Venice and things like that as well. Huge fan of those types of things as well. But writing to me is really becoming full-time. If I'm not writing fiction under Patrick Greenwood, I write cybersecurity blogs for tech companies under my real name. And that's how I tend to support myself. So if I'm not writing cyber for somebody and writing ebooks, I'm writing the next fictional novel that I'm currently working on as well. But I love writing. Every day that I write words is overcoming dyslexia. Every time somebody reads my book and gives me a beautiful review, it makes me feel like I've lifted myself up higher in this world. And I always encourage people to never let anybody tell you that you can't write.
Right.
There's a story in all of us, no matter what our background is. And I just love to show my book to somebody and say, yeah, I actually have that problem too, but you know what?
Yeah,
I did it. You can do it
I
too.
did it.
So definitely love it.
Oh,
Good
what
to
a
hear.
story. Oh my goodness.
Also, Patrick, he helped kids in Vietnam because you have a foundation. Am I correct? Can you share with us about?
Yeah. So, thank you. Yeah, that's actually, thank you, Lucia, for bringing that up. So, all of the books that I sell and coffee that I sell goes to two charities. One is called Helmets for Kids in Vietnam, which is helping to provide helmets for children. And that has been a very worthwhile cause for a lot of years. When I was cycling there in 2012 and 13 and 14, it was countless times you'd see children getting sidewiped by scooters and cars, and none of them had helmets. And so there was a foundation years ago that was started that really was about trying to create low-cost helmets, but safe helmets for kids. And I contribute to that with all my book sales as well. The second one is for Shores of Okinawa. I donate money to an organization called helpoki.org, which is designed to try to reduce poverty in Okinawa as well. And Okinawa is actually one of the more poorer parts of Japan. So any book sales that I make from Shores of Okinawa goes to one charity. And my first book, Forever Sunrise in Saigon, goes to the Helmets for Kids charity as well. Every book that I have that I'm going to writing today and for the next 10 years always have a benefactor. And usually it's some charity within the country which I'm writing about. It's like I pick a charity and say, here's my thing. So maybe Spain, Lucia, maybe I'll find a charity in Spain to donate to. But I love doing that. And it really kind of gives me that motivation when I'm tired or I get writer's block. Say, how do I overcome it? Remember, you're doing this for a purpose, for a cause.
Lucia, can I get another moment with Patrick still? We have time?
Yes, of course.
So Patrick, fiction, when you're writing the fiction, I mean, how do you get the people right to the edge of reality, but scary? That, oh my gosh, this could possibly happen in cybersecurity. It's got to sound real, but you also want to take them to the edge of, oh my gosh, that could happen.
Yes, so that is a very, very interesting double-edged sword to write, because when you're writing fiction about a very non-fictional subject, so Shores of Okinawa, which came out Labor Day weekend, basically the genesis is China hacking Taiwan, which happens every day for the last 25 years. That is a non-fictional reality. Now, I was writing in the book episodes of how China is hacking Taiwan in a fictional context form for the last 3 years. And then when the book came out in Labor Day weekend, my father sent me a link from Newsweek saying, oh, by the way, that whole thing about China hacking the fiber optic cabling actually happened. So the challenging thing when you're writing fiction, especially with the non-fictional topic, is at some point, this may end up becoming real. And so there were several episodes of my book where I intentionally was writing fictional, like, no, this it could happen, but there's no proof that it has happened yet, like hacking medical devices or breaking into banks or stealing crypto. Well, reality is that happens all day long, but it does add to a higher level of authenticity to the fictional story. When tech people read this or cyber people read the book, they're like, whoa, that really did happen, right? I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Patrick, then 20 years from now, they talk about Patrick Greenwood wrote about this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago, 2 years ago. It's like this stuff changes so quickly and so
Yeah.
rapidly. I mean, I introduced the idea of deep fake in this book, and now that's everywhere because of the election. So it's scary to write a fictional in a non-fictional way in which something ends up becoming true after the book has come out. So that's a little bit of an ick, but people read it. The nice thing is that I come from a place of knowledge and experience in the space. So I add things in there that someone that was like a peer of mine can read it going, oh yeah, dude, I remember that. That was well 2014. I'm like, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. So, but yeah, no, it actually makes the fun part of writing. But ultimately, my heart is romance. I really love writing romance more than tech, to be honest with you.
I bet.
Yet the tech is such an incredibly timely topic. I am on the board of a regional community bank. And when I got on the board 20 years ago, nobody had ever heard the term cybersecurity. And now we talk about it at every single meeting. It is just thrilling to harness the good part of it, of technology, and horrifying when the bad actors get involved. So I think you've got a topic of very wide interest.
Absolutely.
So scary because I don't know how they are so sophisticated nowadays. I think the banks are every day trying to avoid something that can be done in every moment. We need to be always checking the account if nothing wrong.
Right. Or start stuffing money back under the mattress like the old days.
And Chimney, I want to comment on I think your work is so important, and it's so thrilling to think about what you're doing is planting seeds for young women for the future. And you think, here in America, we don't have the problem, and it's not a problem in the same way as it is in your country. But just today on LinkedIn, I saw a conference coming up about how women in boardrooms and women in C-suites really do contribute to the bottom line. And they're not just a diversity thing that's good for your, good to check off of your checklist. And so we're still struggling with that. So good for you.
Yes, working.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And that's why also, like the newsletter I started, it's actually going to be 8 years that I started this newsletter. It's been going around for 7 years, 7, 8 years. And it's been an amazing tool as well to get the message out there. Speaking about topics, like it's being mental health month as well. So there's so much stuff that's coming up, and it's in the workplace. Before, other companies I used to work at, they never spoke about mental health. It's just you have to work. There's nothing. They just expect the staff to do their jobs. But I've seen some new things happening in the workplace, which is also a topic that I highlight because I am someone who overcame depression and all those anxiety. So being like an advocate for those type of people, and also like breast cancer, all those type of topics, it really needs to be
it takes a lot of courage.
Spoken about.
Takes a lot of courage. Good job.
Yes.
No, and I think your poems too, that, if you think about building connections, a lot of times people read a book and they get so inspired by an author that they want to emulate the author. And that's really, when you look at a lot of women that have moved up and have become very successful in business and government, military, if you ask them, what was your starting point? They said, oh, I read this book when I was 12. And that changed their life at 12. So I love writers that write about their experiences as a way of radiating, but it also builds a connection, not a physical connection, but a virtual connection with somebody to say, you may never meet, this person, but you're inspired by that person. And then when you write a book, somebody in the younger generation is going to read your book and go, wow, you know what, I'm going to remember 10 years from now what I read. And I think that's the power of writing, is the ability that we inspire people that we will never meet, but we know that we're doing it from the place of the heart. And so I always love to hear great stories when people move up in the world and they do great things, but they always come back to a TV show, a book, and now a podcast is another one as well. They heard something that made them rise above,
Yeah.
the rise of the BS in order to have a successful life. So no, I'd encourage you to keep writing what you're writing, because you're building connections, even though you may not know where the connections are being built to.
Yes.
And Patrick, to your point, which was so fabulous, you may never know
Right.
95% of the seeds that you plant, but they, they just come back. And then every now and then when you find out something you said or wrote made a difference, it's just, so powerful.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, just like the person, who was it? Your daughter who got you the coach to get you to take the. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But in the research of the book, I heard so many incredible stories from people for whom a note or a letter in their life had come at just the right time to make a difference. And just this week, the executor of an elderly friend of mine said, well, Kent always said you wrote such nice notes to him while he was sick. But she said, I found them all in a basket by his chair after he died. And so this ripple effect is just.
So do you mind giving me a bit more about some more examples of personal notes and how you got started with this?
Sure. Well, one of the people that inspired me was my husband. He is a retired physician. And when he was practicing, there was a pharmacist, an older pharmacist in the area who, of course, my husband referred to him a lot, referred patients to him. And when that man retired, my husband wrote him a retirement congratulations letter. And in it, he said, now I know that because my patients told me how often you delivered medicines at night and on the weekends. And I also know that every now and then I would call you to say, I'm sending you a patient and I'm not charging them because they don't have any money, and I hope you can help them. And then I found out later that you did that. Well, it was a lovely thing for my husband to do, and never thought any more about it. Well, 20 years later, when that gentleman died, we went to the funeral home, and his grown children, two of the daughters, came running up to my husband, and she said, Dr. Cottrell, I just want you to know we found the letter that you wrote to my father when he retired, and it was in his Bible.
Beautiful.
Wow.
It was in his Bible. And because of that letter, everybody, all of his grown children and their spouses and their children and grandchildren they all had a glimpse of what their father was like that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's just those kinds of, and one of the New York Times bestselling author that wrote the foreword to my book told of as a teenager, and his father died, and one of the teachers wrote him a letter. And everywhere he goes to speak, he pulls that letter out. He carries it everywhere he goes. And now he's 55 years old. And I knew from his other writing that this had meant a lot to him. And so I reached out to him and asked him if he would consider writing a foreword for my book. And he didn't hesitate. He just.
So many people remember something negative that they heard that changes their life in the opposite direction. So it's really nice to have you take on the kind of thing that empowers people. Same thing, Chimnese, empowering. I love him. That's what we're all about, right, Lucia?
Yes. And also I want to tell Elizabeth, thank you, because she sent her book for my daughter's house in New York, to my daughter's house in New York. And I have this book here, and I started reading it, and I didn't know how to write personal notes, so I'm learning now.
Thank you. Well, I think that kind of feedback means so much, and it's not just a how-to book. It's really, and it's certainly not an etiquette book. It's a book to show you that you have in your own heart the words.
Yes.
Get in touch with.
Exactly.
I had this feeling. Yes.
Yes, and so what makes me so happy when I sometimes people who already wrote notes, but they said, oh, it just reminded me why I do it and how I can do it. So thank you.
You're welcome. And Chimnese, your book Ruins is deeply personal and moving. I was reading about it, your trip to the Holy land. So what inspired you to write this particular story?
Oh, so this is the book that I wrote. Sure. This was very hard. It wasn't an easy book to write. It was always my dream since I was, I think, in my teenage years to go to Israel. It was always like my dream. And then I got this opportunity. I was gifted this opportunity to go to Israel, and I spent two weeks there. That 2 weeks, I didn't want to leave Israel at that time. When I came back, while being on the plane coming back to South Africa, so this happened 2018. So it took me a year, like 2 years, it took me to write this book. And the first draft actually took me 2 years. When I first sat with this book, it was almost like I was weeping most of the time through every chapter that I was writing, because I was writing from the beginning to the end. And the reason why I called the book Ruins, I was looking at the land as it was at that time, and I saw all these barren lands, all these ruined temples, and it was just like I saw a sight to see. But I knew certain things happened in those times while these buildings were looking like that. And then while being there and just asking myself, what is ruined in my own life, in our lives? And it was almost like a metaphorical and physically. I was like in the natural and in the physical, trying to bring these two topics together. And then I called it ruins because in my own life, I was struggling with dreams that I have neglected. Dreams that I took when someone told me I wasn't good enough. And growing up with that words in my mind, knowing that I have a gift, because I was always writing since I was so young. And I said, like, God, I know that I can write this book. And when I put word to paper and having this book published in the middle of lockdown, it was like I couldn't have a lot of people at the book launch, but I managed that. And everyone that showed up at that book launch, it was like almost like 50 people that was there at the time. And everyone who bought the book, they came back with special notes, like Elizabeth said, what it means for us as writers, especially if you thought that your writing is not worth someone buying your book. So especially if you are self-published, I'm a self-published author. So it's very hard to get your stuff out there. That's why I'm so happy that when I started with Instagram, I met up with a whole lot of different writers. But this book is so special to me because of Israel, because of what it stands for my faith as well. And just the interaction with different type of people, different countries that was there, and how we all became one person. It wasn't, I'm from this country, or I'm from that country, or I speak English, or I speak Afrikaans, or whatever language barriers there was. It was just, we are connected as people, connected by soul, by spirit, and our belief system as well. And like right now, the topic around Israel as well, it's a difficult topic to speak about, but just I'm gonna continue loving the country and the people as well, and just praying for peace as well over there. But this book has actually been so inspiring, especially here in Cape Town. It's actually one of my best
I love
sellers
your
right now.
attitude. I was going to ask you how you balance your faith with all your writing, and you've answered that beautifully.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a challenging time for myself as well. And this book has also, like right now, I actually got an award 2 months ago. This book was awarded in South Africa. So I actually got an award for this book, and it's been an amazing journey. And it gave me hope that more people will come around and read the book. I've actually given the books away right now. I'm not selling the book. I'm just like giving it away to.
Did you dedicate the book to somebody when you were writing the book? Did you dedicate it to family, friends, coworkers? Who did you dedicate your book to?
I dedicate my book to the people that was with me on that trip, on my pilgrimage,
Nice.
and to the lady that actually sent me to Israel, and also to the country, because I actually had a scripture in that where I was sitting on top of Jerusalem, so that was like the epitome of why this book was written, just to have a message of hope that whatever's ruined can be revived.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, really beautiful. And Elizabeth, connection is a key theme in your book and your life. So why is human connection so important, especially in today's world, in your opinion?
Wonderful question. And certainly, if you look at philosophers and theologians back for centuries, that theme has been there. But what I have learned in my recent research is that there are scientists, researchers that are now confirming in very statistically significant ways that connection is important. Dr. Brene Brown has written extensively in her social scientific research about the importance of connection. There's an organization called the Heart Math Institute that has actually measured electronically, has measured connection with brain, heart, and then when people connect in emotional ways, there is an electricity, a true electricity that they can measure. And so I think that what Brene Brown has found is that those people that are the most resilient in the face of life's obstacles and are the most content, not necessarily happy. Happy may be overrated,
Content,
but who are the most content and the most able to recover if they get knocked down are those who have a network of connections, not necessarily family, not necessarily friend. I mean, it can be any one of a jillion different types of connection, but it is proven over and over again in different ways what we kind of know intuitively. So that's why it's important. I kind of got at it backwards because I was hitting a point in my own life when semi-retired and I wanted to do more writing, and I was, okay, how do I want to make the rest of my life count? What's important? What has served me in my own life? And I some kind of way got into the idea of connection. And when I started drilling down, it was like, oh, wow, that really is, for me, very foundational.
Yes,
Connection is proved to help with longevity as well. The people that are living well into their hundreds are still involved in family and communication and friends and
group hugs.
Exactly.
Group hugs. Yep.
Yes, for example, I had just moved from the US to Spain, and when COVID hit, and I said, what am I going to do inside home? This podcast that I started, also the books and then the podcast, was something that made my life so much better, because these connections that I started, some people who came to my podcast became my friends, and this for me is priceless.
And worldly, all over the world, you're making connections now.
You see, Chimnese is in Africa, and this for me was a page turn. Not that I was unhappy, but my life is way, way happier now after I started having these connections. For me, every day is a beautiful day, and doing what I'm doing is like I'm living more and more. And also, as Rick said, having connections independently, if it's physically you are every day with someone, or if you are online talking on the phone. It was a revival. It can cause us to feel the feeling of being loved, because this is love, independently if
Across
it's
the
a
world.
romantic or, this is love. It's a way to
I mean,
accept.
we're from all different places and we all have something in common, don't we?
Yes.
And wasn't that the true silver lining of COVID? I mean, that
Yeah.
was an awful time and awful
True.
things happened to a lot of people, but the silver lining was that we learned new ways to connect and we learned how important connection was.
Really?
Mhm.
Yes.
There's just no, I mean, the timing for me was truly providential for my message, because everybody was ready to hear, okay, now I understand why connection is important. Tell me how to make it better.
Yes.
I have a question for Patrick.
Yes.
Patrick, with fictional reality, I gotta imagine that now you visit places with a different eye. Now you got to be looking at it, but you've also got this creative part that isn't reality. So you're almost taking snapshots of places, I imagine, of how I could fit this into a story.
Yes.
Take it away.
I absolutely do that. It's funny, even here in Arizona, I take a morning hike through the Catalina Mountains, which is just right over here. And every path is a story. The cactus, the rattlesnake, there was a 4-foot rattlesnake who slithered right in front of me. And I sat there and I just kind of took pictures of him. And
I can get that into a story. Yep.
So there's a story there.
Yeah.
I think that everywhere you travel, I think people tend to, and I saw this when I went to Italy a couple of years ago. Everybody was so fixated on the tour, getting on the bus, seeing the Spanish Steps, getting off the steps, going to the Colosseum, going to the Forum, but no one stopped to actually absorb what they were really seeing, right? And I really was the person that got kicked off the tour bus because I was the one that rented the bike and rode around actually rode around the chariot races where they filmed Ben-Hur. I'm the one actually took a bike on that dirt and rode around that entire, whatever they called it, the circus. I rode around the circus and the entire tour group voted me off the bus. And they left without me because I'm like, I gotta do this. So I got the bike, I got on, I rode in the dirt, came back, looked around, did not see my tour group anywhere. And then I caught up with them hours later and they were all pissed off because I was like really ruining their schedule.
We waited for you.
Exactly. So I think when you are writing fiction and you go into a non-fictional world, there's always a story. And I made that story that day by being the guy who pissed everybody off by renting a bike, and then riding around the dirt. Remember, there's nothing there. If you've been there, you see what the circus is. You have the Forum, you've got the Coliseum, but then you have this track. There's nothing there. But the point is, that's where it was. There's got to be something there. So I'm that guy. I'm the one that gets kicked off tour buses doing crazy stuff. But writing about it later, that is a piece that's going to be in my next book about really going into a place and going, okay, what can I make of what is here, right? And it isn't going into the perfect hotel or the perfect restaurant or the perfect cafe. It's making life happen no matter where we are. And I truly believe that. So I may start out with kind of a fictional tone, but there's so much nonfiction that we witness that we want to sort of capture as well. But yeah, no, I think that's the exciting part of writing, is to do that.
But Patrick, I got to tell you, 4th of July here in the United States, fireworks everywhere. I go out in my backyard, close my eyes, and I pretend I'm in the war. And it's a scary feeling. I wrote a historical fiction. I went back in time to visit George Washington, Cleopatra, Mozart. So I went back to, I'm in the army with George Washington, eyes closed, and the explosions are going off everywhere. And I did like you, I just take myself back to what it was like in a different place in a different time. Wow, you actually went around that, huh?
I did. And the bike.
How cool. Instead of a chariot.
I was a chariot. I think in Ben-Hur, I'm thinking, okay, I'm beating the guy. The Roman is dying. I mean, I was having so much fun. But the point was that I did it without getting a popularity contest to go to everybody in the tour group and say, hey, people, can we all do this? No, it was more like, I'm going to do this. And I really have to really pass some love to the writers here on the panels, that everybody has to find their own thing. And you got to stick to your own thing. You have to be your own cheerleader, your own voice. But ultimately, that inspires people to do that. There may have been something in that tour bus that maybe a year later they went back and did what I did. maybe they realize,
Mhm.
hey, that dude had something going on there.
Right.
That's pretty crazy. But that's what makes writers wonderful, is we inspire and inspirations build connections that we may never realize we had to that.
Yes.
So
I
yes,
tell you,
no,
one of the things I wish all the time is that we could see the little connections that we make that break off to here and then to here, and all the little things that happen because of something that we did, someone we spoke to, words of affirmation or kindness that we shared with somebody.
yes.
Well,
That's beautiful.
I'm so inspired, Patrick, by your overcoming dyslexia. And I understand
Mhm.
what you said. You haven't overcome it. You've learned to work with it. My father was dyslexic, and he was one of the most wonderful, smartest people I ever knew. So I hope that if you haven't, that you'll consider adding that to your story when you put the about the author part in your books, because I can imagine that there are readers reading your work that would kind of like, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
he did
Maybe I
that.
could do it too.
I can do it
It-
too.
Yeah.
It
And I
comes out a
also,
lot of it comes out a lot of my podcasts. I host a podcast for writers as well,
oh great.
and I really bring that up during my podcast. So Lucia's been on my podcast as well, and I really bring up that as a, hey, this is where I came from. This is what I'm doing. But understandably, I'll never conquer it, because it's something that you don't. It doesn't go away. You just learn to be able to live within it.
Yes.
And I think that everything we have in life, everybody has that. Everybody has a dyslexia moment. They have a learning moment, or they have a ability to not concentrate moment, or unhappiness. But there's always ways to overcome. And I think writing is a great way. I think speaking is a great way. I really encourage people that are writers to do public speaking. I encourage people that are public speakers to become writers. And I think that more people can have confidence in their words, ends up really becoming their champion of how they overcome these struggles as well.
Great advice.
I
Great
love
advice.
it. Love it. And when I started this podcast, I had some naysayers telling me, Lucia, how can you have a podcast if English is your second language? And because I listened to, or I heard these comments, negative comments, I said, no, I am going to be prepared, and I'm going to have the podcast, and I'm sure I can learn. And every day I'm learning is an endless learning. And of course, we need to have the courage, as Chimnese had as well, to go and confrontate your fears, because it's like feel the fear and do it anyway.
You are a joy to listen to, my dear. Love listening to that language. It's just a little bit different tone. What if we all sounded the same? Wouldn't that be awful? And how many people here speak more than one language? Who speaks more than one language here?
So I count half a language?
I only speak one.
I speak
two
5.
languages.
Oh,
Chimnese, how many languages?
2 languages. I still
Two
want to
languages.
learn the other language. South Africa's got 11 languages.
African, yeah.
So I would like to learn the other 9, some of the other 9.
Yes.
It's a bit harsh, but
So I
very
never make fun
difficult.
of somebody who struggles a little bit with the English language when it's their second one. I respect that.
absolutely.
And Chimnese, your book is about your journey to Israel, so both physically and spiritually. So can you tell us more about the challenges and growth you experienced while writing this memoir? You said
Can I add to that, Lucia? I
yes,
want to add to
please.
something I've been dying to ask her too. When you write something personal like that, how personal do you get? Do you worry that you've shared too much? Or do you really tell them how you feel, what you think about?
That is a challenging one, Rick. When I knew I was going to write the book, because I heard this word, this part in my head, you need to write the book about this journey, so that I can remember it also, like physically remember it. But I actually went back to the leaders that was on the journey with me, and I asked them, I want to write this book. I'm going to be speaking about this journey, and obviously these things that happened, and if I can mention what happened and the people that was on this journey with me. And everyone in that group, we were 42 people, and everyone was like, yes, we want, you can write the book. So that was like amazing. I think the challenging part for me, besides writing the book physically, was the inner being. It was more about the inner healing. You think that you are a whole person. You've gone through a lot of things in your life. You've healed. Now you go into that pilgrimage. You now are becoming a pilgrim. Because I used to read books, The Pilgrimage of Paulo Coelho. I love all his books. And he was actually, I always wanted something similar to what he experienced in when he went on to Santiago pilgrimage. So he did that one. And while I basically went with people that I didn't know before I went. I didn't know any, even though we were all from Cape Town, but I didn't know them. It's the first time that I've like physically gone with these people on this journey. And I was very like timid, very how am I going to speak to all these people? So that I think that shyness was also part
Mm-hmm.
in myself as well. And when I was there, I was not Chimnese. I wanted to be part of something. I wanted to relearn everything that I've gone through in my life. While I was there and sitting under different sermons while being at these holy places, I could just feel certain things about myself, learning, like being broken, like growing up without a father, being raised by a single mother. So it was all those type of things that I had to go through, and going into this country as a pilgrim, you basically become almost like, I'm not going to say like Jesus, but you almost like
Mm-hmm.
walking into his footsteps in that state. And it was life changing for me. The growth part was me coming back to South Africa, coming back to Cape Town, and feeling that the place where I was at I can no longer be connected to certain things that I used to be connected to. So my whole lifestyle had to change. My connections to certain people, just somehow it just disinterest. Not me physically telling them I can no longer be connected to them because they weren't good for my life, but somehow these people just vanish into thin air.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was an amazing experience. But coming back, I basically started. That's why Patrick mentioned it, speaking publicly about your experiences, about your writing. Before I started to write, I was never a public speaker. And everywhere I go, people would call me a motivational speaker, public speaker. And I was like, I'm just a writer. I always said I don't want to be on any platform. I just want to write. That was my gift in life. But thank God that I have this ability now to speak as well and go into different places. I've been speaking about Israel for the last 6 years since I came back home.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of good things. I've seen a lot of good things. And I always sometimes go back to where it all started. I might not be able to go back to Israel right now, but the people that was with me, they still connected to me. So we've built that relationships. And when something happened with one, we are all there. We talk about it. We prayed with each other, and each one of them has the book. And yeah, it's been a good, very
You
good,
said something
amazing.
very interesting to me, that feeling like Jesus. And I heard something very interesting the other day about Jesus wasn't looking for followers. He was looking for leaders. So,
Yes.
because of your willingness to use your voice and your words, you are a leader.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
Thank you.
So, Elizabeth, your book, Heartspoken, highlights the power of handwritten notes to connect and comfort others. Let's see, how can you tell us how this simple act can make such a big impact?
I can't wait to read it. I got to tell you.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, gosh, so in so many ways, Lucia. first of all, the very act of taking your stopping, taking your time to gather your thoughts, put them on paper, put them in the mail, tells the other person before they've read a single word that you care.
How many
And
people right now are thinking of somebody they could write that letter to?
I
I know
hope so.
I am.
I hope so. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is the physicality of it. The fact that when you receive a note, it has been touched. It has been, the person took the time to write in their own hand. And I think we all can remember the handwriting of people that our parents perhaps, or somebody that we cared about. And I can still find a letter in my file from my dad, and it makes me happy to see that. I mean, it has a visceral response. And so I think that I use the word heart-spoken. Nobody will doubt, talking to me, that I love handwritten notes, but a heart-spoken note can be typed, it can be dictated, it can be conveyed in other ways. But I do think that the act of going to the trouble to print it out, put it in the mail, makes it more permanent. Because let's face it, emails are gone, and you don't ever see them again. So that there's a permanence about it that really makes it stand out.
I think it was a beautiful act 50, 70, many, many, many years ago. But today, maybe more than ever, because we're so much into technology now, to actually handwrite a letter says something. You receive that. That's not something you read and delete. You don't throw that in the garbage. That gets put in the, somebody someday will be cleaning out after I'm dead, and they'll see this letter.
Yes.
Exactly. And
it's like postcards. Postcards. When
Postcards, yep.
sends us.
Yes. After my dad died and we were cleaning out his files, he used to make copies of letters that he wrote. And so it was kind of a treat to find letters he had written to his grandchildren and his nieces and nephews and his children. I mean, we all had copies of things he had written to us, but it's such a legacy. And one of the pivotal moment in my own life, when I realized it was way more than just good manners, was a letter that I got from a stranger, saying that a letter I had written not to her, but to her daughter-in-law when her son took his own life. I didn't know this woman. I wrote to the daughter-in-law to convey my condolences, and she shared my note with the mother-in-law, and she said she read it 25 times. It just saved her. And I mean, it was like a bolt of lightning to me. Like, oh my goodness, this is way more than just something nice thing to do. And the ripple effect again, not to have even written to her directly, was just amazing. And so I talk in the book about how to just kind of take a moment, and it doesn't take long, especially as you do it more, to just kind of center yourself, think about the person to whom you're writing, and how you want them to react when they get to the other side, when it gets to their house. The other thing is that there are so many more times that you can make an impact that aren't your typical sympathy note or thank you note, which are the main things. I wrote to a lot of people that I quoted in my book, if they were still alive. I just wrote to let them know that that something they had written inspired me, and I added it to my book. I write to writers that I love their book. If I can find an address, that's pretty tricky this day and time.
Yes, it is.
But so these are all I mean, you all know, I bet every one of you have gotten a note from somebody who loved your book, or who, and it just means a lot. And you think, especially people that are really well known, you think, oh, they must get notes all the time. Well, maybe, but I bet you'd be surprised how much it still means to them. So thank you. I just think that that's part of the reason that sets it apart. The fact that you don't have to throw it away. It can be put up on a refrigerator. It can be put in a drawer. It can be put in a basket next to your chair and reread and
An
enjoyed.
anonymous person read my book and sent me.
Oh, that.
That is cool. Oh, that's a connection. That's a serious connection right
That
there.
was a heartspoken message, even if it wasn't
Yeah,
words.
and it just made it on our podcast.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
Yeah, it means a ton to me. I keep it with me all the time. I took it on vacation.
I believe that.
You put him by the Eiffel Tower or the Leaning Tower of
Yes,
Pisa,
yes.
and you get the real money shot. That's beautiful.
He gets me. Yeah. Well, this has been a real treat getting to know you.
You too, as well. Amen.
Yes, yes, I like it. And
Patrick, I don't know. I just, we write a lot of the same stuff, fictional, try and make it seem real. Give me a little bit about the inspiration, or when did it hit you? And I know it hits you like a brick sometimes, where it just keeps going until you say, I got to write this down. I got to get this out of my head or I don't sleep. When did that happen for you?
Cool. Well, so everyone's talked about COVID so far. For me, I was still in tech around COVID. And you mentioned, Elizabeth mentioned the calendar going from full to nothing. In tech, your calendar went from being halfway full to completely full, because with Zoom and Citrix, we saw that could get meetings with people that we normally would have to drive to or fly to. That
Right.
now just simply click, 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 and suddenly people's calendars were getting piled up. And I remember in around 2020, 21, I was extremely frustrated with the industry badly. I mean, it was becoming, the technology was being built that was only lasting until people were getting acquired. And when they got acquired, everybody disappeared. And suddenly this technology that was supposed to save the day wasn't saving anything. And people made money, they ran away. Customers are sitting with these products going, we just got hacked because of, whatever. So I sat down on a blue couch in my office at the time, and I whipped out big old thick notes of what originally was called Sunrise in Saigon, which I wrote while I was in Vietnam in 2012 and 13 and 14. And I was having such an anxiety attack about where I was really going with my life and my career. I was in tech for so long. I was playing with tech toys when I was 6. And here I am, just looking at myself going, I can't do this anymore. I'm really stuck. And so I looked over and for that binder, and it was actually something almost as
And it was
thick.
all the way written, you're saying? You had written the whole thing?
Most of it was notes. And then I said, wait a minute, let's take a deep breath here for a moment. I started flipping through all these notes from 2014, 15, 16. I always wanted to write this story of my first trip to Vietnam in 2012. I always wanted to write it. Originally, I was writing as a historical fiction, and then it suddenly became a romantic novel. Then it got confused a little bit, being a historical fiction, romantic novel. It sort of lost its way. But my moment was sitting on that couch saying, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing, and I'm going to write. I want to write the story that is in my heart, that's in my mind, that's going to make me help develop a purpose in life. And I did that sitting there on that couch, and I put all the technology work aside. I cleared my calendar. I got out of meetings. I started messaging to the company I was working for. Hey, you may not have me in 3 months. I'm really looking to get, check out of this whole. And every day I would write 6 to 7 hours a day, 3,000, 3,500 words. And eventually I got to 97,000 words on the first book. Now, mind you, I had to go through globs of grammar changes and, editors and so on. But that moment is sitting on the couch going, I'm defining my purpose one word at a time. And when I realized that I could do that, then all the anxieties of what I was living through being in tech went away. And today, even now at 2024, 2025, I don't have the blue couch anymore. I've replaced it with something much nicer, but I still pop myself on the couch going, okay, what is book 3 going to look like? And I start writing notes. Thank you, Elizabeth. I start writing notes, but I write notes to myself. How do you want this to say? How do you want this to be? How do you want this to, how do you envision this? And the moment I can't write a note, I close the book and say, don't force yourself. Write it when it comes to you. And so today I'm very blessed to, when I feel like writing, I write. When I don't feel like writing, I don't. And I find that I create so much better work by doing that. But that was my moment, was sitting on that couch in 21 going, that's who you were. Who do you want to be, right? And that's what really made me commit myself to wanting to be a full-time writer.
Wow.
So there's many, I've heard the rocking chair, when you're sitting on your rocking chair, when we're good and old, do you want to be saying, I'm glad I worked 80 hours a week at the tech place, or I'm so glad I finished that book. But I have a question for Elizabeth. What about writing notes to yourself? I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
That's fascinating. Literally just today, I sent a note to somebody who talked about writing a letter to yourself, and I wrote an article about a year ago, 7 great reasons to write a letter to yourself, and it all has to do with getting to know, because one of the foundational connections is connection with yourself, and that's self-awareness, self-knowledge. Because how, for instance, to Patrick's point, how do you know what's going to make you happy if you don't know what makes you happy? I mean, if you haven't thought about it, if you haven't gotten to know yourself, what makes your heart sing? What makes you miserable? You need to spend some time thinking about that. And so a letter is simply one tool that can be used for that purpose. The other thing is to write to your former self, to your young self, perhaps. Chimnese talked about her struggles growing up, and maybe from her vantage point now, she would write a letter of compassion to that young child, or write a letter to your future self about your aspirations. So it's a great question. Great question and a great tool.
I was trying to figure out, like Patrick was saying, what does my future look like? And I struggled to figure it out. And unfortunately, at the time, my mother has just passed at 99 years old, had dementia. So I was living in a world where I took care of her, a lot of dementia. I met so many dementia patients that were brilliant people, brain surgeons, famous dancers, so many things who could no longer remember who they are. And so this book was future me much later in life, trying to deal with a world where I was a dementia person. I was that person now, all these people telling me who they were to me, and trying to function within that world. And that one took a lot out of me, but it turned out wonderful. I shared, and that's why I was asking Chimnese, how much are you willing to share? I shared so much personal with that. I put it out, and I remember my wife saying, too much, too much. Why would you say all that stuff? And I thought people were going to crush me for this book. It was my 9th book, and I thought, this is the one where they all say he's a knucklehead, something's wrong with him. It's crushing it. It's doing so well. I'm so pleased, but now people know a little too much about me, maybe.
But that's okay. Yeah.
Love me. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing.
Speaking to figuring out what you want in your future, I think I can tell you this, being the oldest of this group, that it's really tempting to think, oh, you get paralyzed because you can't figure it out. But what I have learned is that all you have to figure out is whatever light is shining on that very next step. Because as soon as you take that next step, then the light moves and you see the next step. And you can make a whole journey that way, one step at a time.
Love that analogy.
Yes. And Chimnese is powerful. I was reading her things and I said, wow, such an inspiration lady she is. And yes. So, Rick, can you close our panel, please? Because we have, yes.
Sure. I threw away the paper. I wrote, I had all the stuff that I was supposed to say, or I already tossed that.
No, that's
you have notes to
you
yourself, man. Notes to yourself. Come on.
I think we end with a prayer. No, no, no. I just want to say what a pleasure this has been. I got to tell you, when I was getting ready to come on, I had a technology failure. I don't know what I would have done without Jennifer Preem, the name that you see. She's my wife, and I was just a panicking mess. I had to change shirts because I was sweating. Lucia's counting on me. I'm not ready. And as soon as you guys came on, I just calmed back down and was just able to listen and relate to you, and from all different places. And we have something in common, and I'm glad we take the time to get together like this. I really enjoy the RV. The first time I met you, Lucia, I couldn't believe that you had authors from all different continents on, and it's just such a pleasure to be a part of this. And I really appreciated meeting you all today.
it's such an honor to know that such a talented people are coming to, my projects, my ideas. So this is something amazing. And if you'd like to learn more about today's guests and their books, you can find all the information on our website. Also, we'll be publishing about them on wordauthors.org, Brand Education, the Relatable Voice podcast, and Catch the Story. And stay tuned for our next panel. And thanks for watching Uncut with Lucia by wordauthors.org. And I'll see you next time. And for you all, I send you all my love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure, guys.